Okay, hello everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining me on this Wednesday afternoon or morning, depending on where you're joining me from. We are going to go ahead and get right into it because I have a lot that I want to share with you today. I expect that we'll have some extra people trickling in as we go through. I recommend joining me down in the chat box there. You should have access to that. There's also a section where you can ask questions. One thing that I do ask is as we're working through, I kind of put the slides together so that we can work through it pretty quickly because I have a lot to share, but I don't want to take up a whole bunch of your time today. I imagine we'll be here about an hour. But if you have a question that pops up as we're working through it, go ahead and throw that question in the question box or the chat box while you think of it, and then I'll come back to all of the questions at the end. We're going to do a Q&A then, and I can answer everything all at once. So I do apologize if you have to look like at my actual little keynote thing there. For some reason, when I hit to play it on full screen, it takes away my access to the chat box and everything else, so I'm not able to see the webinar pieces. So you're just going to have to peek ahead. Don't peek ahead at the other slide. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to talk about the 10 steps to nature hack your child's indoor learning space. And basically that just means bringing nature indoors. With the weather changing here, I live in Oregon, and it's, yesterday we woke up, it was 37 degrees and it was rainy. And while we do still go outside with our kids, even when it's not beautiful outside, there's definitely days where we can't go outside all the time. One of the biggest questions that I get asked is how can I bring nature indoors to really still give my kids that opportunity to get all the benefits from nature and explore and learn with nature, which they love doing, but when we can't always be outside. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So some housekeeping rules to get started. The first thing I'll ask you to do is any distractions that you can shut down, go ahead and do that. Like I said, I'm going to try to rush through this in as good of a pace as possible to get as much in with our time. But if you're distracted, then it's going to be harder to pay attention. So close out the Facebook, turn the phone off. If the kids can be entertained doing something, you might even hear mine come running in at some point. I know we can't always shut those distractions off, but do the best that you can there to be able to focus for our time together. If you haven't already, grab a pen and paper because when you take notes when they come to you, you're much more likely to take action on those steps later on. So as opposed to just kind of logging something away thinking, oh, that's a good idea, you might not be very likely to come back to it. Because we're busy. We have lots going on in our lives. We have kids, we have jobs, we have houses, and those good ideas tend to just disappear over or behind the to-do list. So if you write them down, you're much more likely to get them started. But I do have something to help you with that later on. Anyway, do engage with us in the chat box. And like I said, if you have questions, go ahead and throw them in there. I'll come back to them at the end. And then along with that, please do stick around till the end if you can. I'll have the Q&A. We'll answer all your questions. I have a freebie to give you. I have a giveaway I'm going to do and some other special stuff to share. So I've got lots going on at the end. So we got to work through all of this stuff first. So I'm going to start by asking you some questions, and you can engage right in the chat box there. So right now, when you look at your child's indoor learning space, what do you feel? So I don't want you to tell me what it looks like, but what do you feel when you walk into that space? And kind of with that, what do you think your child feels when they walk into that space? So depending on what kind of space you have set up now, maybe you don't have a space, or maybe you don't. I could hide the thumbnails. Oh, Noreen, that's a good idea. I just saw that in the chat box. I could. Once I get down to like number 9, you won't see anymore, I think, but we'll keep going anyway. So right now, what do you think when you look at your child's learning space? Do you feel like it's engaging? Do you think your child is excited to be there? Does it feel very natural, or does it feel very kind of plastic, or does it feel colorful or kind of blah? So those are the first things that I want you to think about. Feel free to share those in the chat box or just kind of think them to yourself. The next question I have for you is, what elements of nature do you currently see in your space? So when you're in your child's learning space, whether that's their bedroom, their playroom, whatever, what do you see already that is natural? Do you see, is there light? So Yvonne says her space feels warm and fun. Good. That's something you want it to feel like. So what do you already see with nature in your space? Do you see, if you have a window, you could say that there's natural light already. Maybe you have some plants in there. Maybe you have swapped out a lot of the plastic items with, wooden items or bamboo, making them a little bit more natural feeling. And is nature readily available for your child to interact with? And if you say no, that's totally fine. That's why we're here today, to make those changes. And then would you like to learn 10 easy steps to bring nature into your child's indoor learning space? So Noreen says she sees lots of acorns, walnuts, and branch blocks. Awesome. Yvonne says a picture of flowers, a big window, and wooden shelves. Great. Hillary says she's having a difficult time with the audio. I don't know why that would be. I'll turn up my mic a little bit, but I'm not really sure why. Maybe if you tried logging out and logging back in, or refreshing the page, maybe that might help, Hillary. I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm going to keep going here. If anybody else has some answers for her there, you could maybe help her out with that. I'm not really sure why. I don't think anybody else is having issues with that. Anyway, so we're going to keep going here. So 3 reasons this webinar would work for you. So you're here probably because of one of these reasons. So number 1, you live in a climate where there are many days when you can't go outside. So you want to bring nature indoors. This is particularly me. My sound is good. Yvonne says her sound is good. Yeah. So maybe you live somewhere where there's a lot of snow through the year. We used to live in Pennsylvania, and we would have snow. They're expecting some snow pretty soon. So from now until probably February, going outside isn't really something that we have access to there. And now we live in the Pacific Northwest, where there's rain for a lot of the year. So that might be one reason that you're here, and one way that I can help you today. A second reason would be your child doesn't really engage much in their space right now, and you want to create a more inviting learning space for your child. So if you find yourself saying, you have so many toys, why don't you go find something to do? If that is you, then this is a good webinar for you, because you might find that your child is not really engaging with the space that they already have, and that's something that we're going to address in a little bit. And number 3, you are happy with your space, and your child's happy with your space for the most part, but you want to find out how you can incorporate more natural elements. So maybe you already have something really great set up, and you just are here to kind of learn some more techniques for bringing nature inside. So if you fit into one of those categories, which I imagine if this enticed you and you're here because of that, then you're going to fit into one of those categories, and we love to have you here. So I definitely see some new names in the attendees box there. So I'm going to do a little introduction here. And for those of you, I also see some familiar names. So bear with me if you've met me before. But my name is Leah McDermott, and you can see me here in the photos, and this is my family. I'm a mom, first of all. These are my boys. Charlie is 4, and Desmond is 18 months old, and we live in Oregon. It's me, my husband, and my boys, and our entourage of too many animals that we carted across the country with us this summer. But I am a former teacher. Oh, good, Hillary, got it. Awesome. All right, so audio is working for everyone. So I'm a former teacher, and I now have dedicated my time to helping other families and educators provide meaningful learning experiences for their children through nature. And what took me to this path, a little bit of backstory, I was homeschooled as a child, actually. My father was in the military, and we moved around a lot. So homeschooling worked out best for our family, and it was the greatest thing that could have happened to me as an individual. When it came time to sort of choose a path in life, I knew that my passion for knowledge and sharing that passion for learning with others was where I needed to go in life. So I went to school to be a teacher, and I got 2 master's degrees in education. I got dual certified, and I went into the inner city schools, got a job in the inner city schools teaching, ready to change the world. And unfortunately, it was very disheartening, not because of the students or because of the parents, but because of the way that our system has been structured around testing, basically. All of the nature had been removed, all of the sciences and the social studies and anything that really made sense with helping children become a part of a society and become a part of their world had been replaced with test prep. And it was very, very frustrating for me, because I believed very strongly in providing individual learning experiences for children, helping them discover things that were of interest to them, involving them in their communities and nature and their world around them. And after several years of teaching, it just became even more and more of a struggle. My class sizes got bigger. There was more of a push from administration to kind of make learning across the board for everyone. And all of these things were things that I struggled with. So after I had my oldest son in 2011, I chose not to go back to the classroom. And I vowed that I would find a way to share all of this passion somehow, just not in that way. So when my son was 1 year old, I was longing to share that knowledge again. So I started a natural living blog and just sort of began sharing my family's green journey and the things that we were doing around our farm. And then as my son got older, I kind of just naturally started sharing a lot of the activities that I was doing with him. And that was always the most popular with my followers. They wanted to see more and more of what I was doing for my son with nature education and just education in general. And then last year in 2014, when I had my younger son, Desmond, at that point, Charlie was almost 3. So I really was doing a lot of more structured things with him. He was really interested in learning and developing. So I kept sharing those kinds of things. And that's when I really had a lot of people asking me, could you please put together something that shows us specifically what you're doing with your son so that we can do this too. So that kind of pushed me to develop a program, which I've done and I'll share about later. And I also was really starting to long for this sense of community. I knew that all of my followers kind of wanted to share together. So I started a Facebook community in the spring, and this is it here. It's the Nature Inspired Homeschooling Group, and we just reached 1,800 members the day before yesterday, and we're almost to 1,900 already. So it's an incredible group that's growing rapidly, and we are just filled with parents and grandparents and teachers and educators and just so many people all coming together to share ideas and support one another, to get our kids outside, get them enjoying the world around them and other people. And I'm going to put that link in the chat box for you so you can click on that directly. It's bit.ly/nature group will take you right there. So if you're not already a member over there, do please come and join us. It's a great place to be, and we have all kinds of fun stuff in there. And there's actually 2 fun freebie gifts in there right now for you if you go in and find them. But anyway, so through this Facebook group that grew very quickly, I think in the first 24 hours we had like 300 members. So I knew that people were longing for this sense of community to find other people that were doing what they were doing with their kids. And through this community, I started to see a lot of the same questions popping up. And one of those was, how do I bring nature indoors? How do I keep that inspiration going when I can't be outside with them? So what I did was I took some of those more common questions and I put together some webinars and some training courses around them to kind of help answer those questions in one really solid piece. So that's why we're here today. One of the most common questions I get is, how do I bring nature indoors? How do I extend that past a hike or a nature walk or an activity outside? What can I do to keep that inspiration going? So that's why we're here. That's what we're going to talk about. That's enough of the intro there. We're going to dive right into the content. So grab your pen and paper, grab your coffee or your tea, and we're going to get started here. So why is it important to talk about bringing nature indoors and engaging with your kids outside of just being outside? So when your child connects with nature, they actually are developing cross-modally, which means across every domain of learning that's happening in their brains, nature helps them develop all of that simultaneously. So they're developing social skills. And what's really great about that is even when your child is playing alone with nature, they're actually developing social skills, even by playing alone, which is pretty incredible research done about that. They're developing intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So every realm of development, when they have a chance to connect and engage with nature daily, all of those things grow at the same time. So it's really one thing that you can do to just boost everything that your child is learning and developing, is getting them involved with nature in some way. So I have a 10-step process here that I'm going to share with you. Jot them down if you want, but at the end I am going to give you a link to where you can get like a printable to get all of this on one sheet for you. So don't have to worry about taking detailed notes, but anything that might jump out at you, you definitely want to write that down. So the first step is your why. And the reason that I start this, like I said earlier, I've put together a couple of different training courses and things And they all start the same way. They all start with a purpose, because when you're starting on any kind of journey or when you're trying anything new, if you don't have a reason or a purpose, it just kind of falls flat, or you don't tend to care about it as much as you would if you had a real reason or a purpose or a why. So, when you saw an ad for this webinar, whether it was in my nature group or, on Instagram, or just an ad in Facebook, somewhere you saw an ad for this webinar and you clicked on it and you're here today, or you're watching on the replay. So you have a reason for being here. So what I want you to do is just for a moment, and if you're watching the replay, pause it and think about this for a minute. But what do you want your child to experience out of this indoor space that you're putting together for them and that you're bringing nature to? So I want you to think about their daily experience in their learning space, not what it looks like. Again, this is something we mentioned at the beginning. I don't want you to think about specifically what it looks like, but what you want your child to feel or see or hear and touch. What do you want them to smell, to imagine, to wonder? So think about that experience. Maybe close your eyes and free write a little bit. And if you have any ideas right now that popped up to you, type those in the chat box, the question box. You guys can feel free to chat with each other there as I'm working through this. And what I do want to do here is just kind of share with you my why, just to kind of give you an example of and this is something that I wrote down when I really started getting on this journey of, bringing nature to my kids as much as possible. So I'm just going to read this to you so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So my purpose for creating an engaging indoor learning space is, of course, for my children, Charlie and Desmond. I know that when they spend time in and learn with nature, they're getting an immense amount of benefits in every area of their lives. So I want to be able to create a space indoors for them to be able to have that experience even when they aren't able to be outdoors. I want my learning space to be a place where my children can go and feel inspired to create, explore, and imagine. It is comfortable and clean. There's a lot of natural light and green living things, making it feel like they are almost outdoors. They can touch and feel and smell elements of nature all around them, as it is seamlessly mixed in with the man-made elements of the room. It is a space that makes them feel safe to be silly, conscious, and uniquely themselves. So that is specifically my what my purpose is. So Chris says, I'm a Christian and I want to connect my children and children in my care to the Creator. So that's a great reason. And there's no better way to do that than with nature, right? It's all right there for you. So that's great. If you have other ideas you want to share there in the chat box, or if you're jotting them down, but definitely start with that purpose. So now in the more practical sense, the first thing you can do, and this is technically step 2, but it's going to be step 1 of our action plan, is increasing natural light. So hopefully there is at least one window in the learning space that you're going to be transforming here. So there are studies that have been done that show that an increase in the amount of natural light that people engage with, and this is true for adults as well as children, but an increase in the amount of natural light literally makes people happier people. They feel more connected to strangers. They're kinder to general people on the street. They have a better connection to the people in their lives. They work better as a team. They're more productive. So, when you are able to bring in more natural light to a space, you automatically can change so much about the way that your child is learning, the way that they're interacting with others, their mood in general, and yours as well. So this isn't just for children, this is for adults too. And I like to think about, I don't know if you watch, HGTV or learning channels like that, or like house transformations, but one of the things that they talk about the most is increasing natural light in a space because of what amazing things it can do for the feeling of a space, and they're doing that because it changes the feeling of people. So that's the first thing that we're going to do, is take a look at how we can increase the natural light in our space. And one of the things that you can do, the first thing that I recommend, is looking at the window that you have, or the windows that you have, and if you can get rid of any blinds or shutters or window treatments that are unnecessary, get rid of them. I know that we're coming at this from like a decorator standpoint, but really you want to bring in as much light as possible. So if you can take those blinds down, or take those heavy curtains down, or take shutters off, that's the first thing that you want to do. And then I have some tips that I can share with you as far as, tricking the light or tricking the way people see the light in a space. You don't have to have big bright windows. Specifically, the room that my kids use, there's just one tiny window and it faces the south side of the house. So there's very little actual direct sunlight coming in the room, but you wouldn't know it when you walk in because it looks very, very bright. And we never use the overhead light. Definitely never use the overhead lights, but I'll talk about that. So one of the best things you can do is to utilize mirrors in your space because a mirror will bounce the natural light all around the room. So put them down at your child's level, obviously, so that that light is shining, on and near them and what they're working on. Hanging a mirror directly across from the window, whatever wall the window is on, hang the mirror on the opposite wall, a mirror on the opposite wall. But you can also use mirrors all around the room, put them on tables and allow your child to work on top of a mirror, set it behind the table so that they see the backside of what they're working on. Put it down on the floor level. If you have like a building space down on the floor and you can prop a mirror up behind it, the child can see every angle of what they're building, as well as having that natural light bouncing around. So mirrors are a really great way to increase light in the space. Another thing you can do is sheer window treatment. So if you just can't bring yourself to get rid of everything hanging on the window, hang window treatments or curtains that are sheer or very light colored and light in weight so that it doesn't inhibit the light flowing into the room. If you're in a space where you can paint, light colored walls and floors make all the difference in a space. So if you can paint the walls with a really light color, paint the ceiling a light color, adding like white area rugs or light colored rugs to the floor will brighten up a space as well. So anything you can do to lighten the room, especially if you have a limited amount of natural light, will really help there. Strategic furniture placement is kind of key as well. And what I mean by this is what you'll want to do here is you'll want to watch the room. Before you make any changes, watch the room throughout the day. And this is kind of a tip that gardeners will use when they're putting in a new plot. They'll watch the space all day long and see what happens with the light, where the light hits to kind of determine where the plants are going to go best. And this is exactly what you can do in your learning space as well. Watch the space throughout the day, kind of check in on it every hour, make a note of where the sunlight is hitting. And then what you want to do is strategically move the furniture or the activities in the room around so that they're getting the most amount of light as possible. So what you might find, and when I taught this as a course, I had somebody who noticed that all of the natural light in their room was being taken up by storage shelves. So she was able to make big changes just by moving the storage shelves away from the light and putting, work tables and area rugs where children can sit on the floor and using the light strategically in that way. So that's one thing that I recommend doing then, watching the room through the day, seeing what happens with the sun, and then moving the things around in the room to make the most of that amount of space. And then intentional lighting, I mentioned to not use overhead lights. So specifically, if you're in a space that has fluorescent lights, definitely try as best as you can not to use those fluorescent lights because along with those studies that show that natural light makes people happier, it's unfortunately the opposite with the fluorescent lights. It really can make people unproductive, and it it kind of does the opposite of what lights should do. It inhibits visual information input. We turn on the lights so that we can see, but fluorescent lights actually harm the way that our bodies are bringing in, our brains are bringing in visual information. So turn off those fluorescent lights. Try to avoid those overhead lights because they kind of put like a weird dim glow on things. So utilize the windows and the natural light as much as possible. And then when you need to pull in light, try to do it in a very intentional way. So Christmas lights are actually a wonderful way to increase a soft amount of light in the room. If you're going to use lamps, put them down near a child's level. So maybe on a table or, use floor lamps. And there are light bulbs that you can buy that kind of mimic more natural sunlight. I can't off the top of my head remember what those are called. If somebody knows what I'm talking about, maybe throw that in the chat box. But if you looked it up or asked at a Home Depot or whatever, they would be able to tell you. But really thinking about the light that you do bring into the space. So I spent a lot of time here. Let's keep going. I get so excited about this stuff. So the next step is decluttering the space. Now, this is not specifically a nature tip, but you have to take out everything that doesn't belong before you can strategically and meaningfully put things in that do belong. So I call this course nature hacking, and in this step, we kind of have to hack a different way. So you want to go into your space and get any of those materials out that are not flexible. Now, flexible material is something that can be used in more than one way. So, for example, something like a jigsaw puzzle is not flexible because there's only one way that it can go together. So that isn't necessarily something that you want to keep out at your child's reach all the time. It's totally nothing against jigsaw puzzles. My oldest son loves them, but he doesn't have access to them all the time because that's not something that's going to promote his imagination or his creativity or his, creative elements of play and learning and problem solving. So what I recommend doing here is sort of setting up, and this kind of goes along with the next step, but setting up kind of a rotation system. And if you, thinking back to those 3 reasons this webinar is for you, if you are one of those people who identified with your child has a great space set up as far as you're concerned, but they're not engaging with it, I bet the reason is that there's too much there. So go through your space, take out all of those things. What I recommend doing is having 2 bins when you go through, a donate pile and a rotate pile. And if it's something that is not creative minded, or it's not something that your child really plays with very much, throw that in the donate bin. Now is actually a great time of year to do that with Christmas coming up and the holidays coming up. Kids tend to get gifts from grandparents that, are a lot of times those plasticky toys that we don't really always want in our home. But now's a good time to kind of declutter before that happens. And then a rotate bin for things like jigsaw puzzles or some of those toys that your child loves, but maybe they don't play with all the time because they're there all the time. So you want to pull a lot of that out and really focus on getting your learning space filled with accessible and organized and open-ended activities so that your child has the freedom to kind of engage and play when they're feeling inspired and motivated. So, and right along with that is step 4 and setting up this toy rotation system. And the reason that we want to do that is a lot of times as parents, and this, if you think about it, it goes back to our own childhoods in many ways. But when, we think about setting up a playroom or a toy room or a learning room or a classroom, a lot of times we think that more is better and that, a child walking into a space that kind of looks like a Toys R Us is just going to be so inspired to play and have fun. But really the opposite is true. If a child, children have very short attention spans, and if there are too much presented to them all at once, they actually can go into kind of a state of overwhelm. Some kids can get anxiety about that, and they're much more likely to just shut down and play with nothing. So if you find yourself all the time saying, you have so many things, go pick something to do, and I'm guilty of saying that as well. But generally, it's not because they don't want to do something or they don't know what to pick. It's that there's just too much, and they're overwhelmed and they don't know what to choose because they look around the room and just see clutter. They don't see what adults see, which is 1,000 different toys or puzzles or games or activities. So when you go through that step 3 decluttering and kind of pull out a lot of those non-flexible materials, or when there's repeats of a lot of things, you pull all of those out, then you put them into a rotation system. And the way that I do this is, so in our learning space, I have, some tables, and we have an art corner, of course, and then we have shelves with a couple different activities on them. And they're usually all related to what my kids are interested in at the time. But everything else, all of the puzzles and the games and the toys that aren't being used in the space right away, they're put in totes and they're in a closet out of the kids' reach. And we rotate those every week, or every other week or 10 days, whenever the kids start to kind of lose interest, we rotate those out. So I'll pack up a lot of the things that are already in the room. We'll put those at the end of the rotation line, pull out a new tote and kind of unpack everything. And it's like a whole new world of toys. I didn't buy anything new. I didn't start anything new, but everything is new to them. And it's set up in a way that it is engaging, and there's not too much. The kids aren't overwhelmed. So they're constantly excited about that. So Chris says, I like to rotate the toys my kids obsess about. For example, I have a boy who will only play with toy cars. He won't explore at all. So I rotate these out and add loose parts when I do to promote and extend his play and creativity. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So you also, on the other end of that, the kids who don't know what to do, you have the kids who only do one thing, and it's totally okay for kids to love those cars, but maybe they're not engaging in creative play as much as they could with that. So by rotating those out, you're kind of forcing the child into looking for something else, or like you said, by promoting those loose parts. And that's something that we're going to talk about in a little bit too. And then one little tip I like to throw in here is something called the daily quiet boxes. And I share this not necessarily because it fits, but because it was a total lifesaver for me after I had my second son. I was trying to run a business and be mom to a 3-year-old and be mom to a newborn, and I was run down. And finding these quiet boxes was a total lifesaver for me. And what you do is, at the beginning of the week, I set up, I have 5 little baskets that I fill at the beginning of the week with lots of different things. So I'll put in quiet activities. So lacing cards, some natural element, just random natural elements, sensory bottles, books, independent reading books, just any kinds of things that are quiet, calm activities. And those are generally things that you can pull when you go through that step 3 of decluttering the space. And I set those up, and then they're ready for the week. And then each day at quiet time, and this was specifically a lifesaver when my son stopped napping. So he still needed that quiet time during the day, but he wasn't sleeping. So this was a way that I could give him this basket of things. He could sit quietly for 40 minutes to an hour. Lots of times he'd fall asleep anyway, but he can engage with these quiet activities. Maybe he'd have a snack with it at the same time. And it was a great time for him to kind of calm his thinking down, calm himself down a little bit. And I could also get a lot of things done during that time, just like when he was napping. So while you're going through, I put this here because it's a great time to do it. While you're decluttering your space, while you're setting up that rotation system, throw in a couple of these daily quiet boxes, and I bet you'll see that it makes a huge difference for you and your family and your kids. So moving on back into the nature. So now you've taken all of those things out that don't belong, all of the overwhelming pieces, all of the non-flexible pieces, and you're going to put in the number one thing. And if you're here today, you registered through my site and you saw that I was going to share the number one thing that you can do. And this is it. It's here on step 5. The number one thing that you can do to bring nature indoors is by setting up a nature table. And by doing this, you're going to give your child a space that is uniquely theirs. This is not something that the parents or the teachers will set up for the child. This is something specifically for the child to have control over. So you designate a table down at their level, or if you're a very limited space and you don't have a table, even I've had some families do just a tray that they'll pull out and put away, or they have like a rolling cart that they use. So you might have to be creative here, but giving your child a space that they can feel is totally theirs. And what they're going to do to bring the nature to this table is going to be your child's responsibility. So what I do is my son has a nature bag that he carries around because depending on what he's interested in at the time, right now, for example, he's totally obsessed with trees because of all the leaves changing color and falling. Anything that falls off of a tree right now is just the coolest thing in the world. So, we'll be out on a walk or he'll be out playing in the neighborhood and he's just bringing leaves, all these colored leaves and seed pods and acorns and all these things that are falling, he wants to bring inside. So to promote that and continue that learning once he does come in, he has a nature bag that he can fill. So every walk that we go on or every, hike or whatever, he carries around his nature bag and he can fill it up and bring it back inside, and all of those items go to his nature table. And at the nature table, the one thing that the adults do bring to this space is investigation materials. So things like at his nature table, for example, we have things like magnifying glasses, some different little cups and bins and scoops so that he can manipulate pieces however he needs to. I have a mortar and pestle, which is probably the most popular thing at the nature table. Knives, kid-friendly knives and scissors and hammers, anything that can help the child deconstruct the nature, because that's the best way that they can kind of learn how it goes together is by taking it apart. And we'll often put like bowls of water there or spray bottles. Just anything that can help him investigate the nature that he brought in from outside at the table. And then, you'll have to set up your own little guidelines for that. The one thing that I do as far as interacting with it is at the end of every week or couple of days, depending on how much new things he's bringing, I will go in sometimes and remove some of the older pieces that he's crushed up or that he's obviously not using anymore. I'll kind of just help him keep the space cleaned up a little bit. And we did specifically have to set up a couple of rules. No living creatures were allowed to come to the nature table. So you could follow my lead or learn from my learn from my past, I guess. I didn't set up these rules before they were necessary, but here in the Pacific Northwest, we have a lot of snails. This was new to my son. We found lots of lovely creatures crawling around the home after he had brought snails to his nature table. So anyway, you might have to set up some rules about that. No living creatures unless we talk about it first. But the nature table is a fantastic way to extend that natural learning when you come inside with your kids. So step 6 is bringing plant life in. There's really, this was kind of like a tie with my number 1 because there's really nothing better you can do for any indoor space than to bring plants into it. They clean the air. They provide more oxygen for us. The benefits of interacting with green plant life for children as well as adults are amazing. What it does to the emotional standings and just like mental set points and the way that we learn. Having that interaction with green plant life is something that's very important for everybody to get daily, specifically children who are constantly in a state of learning new things. And they also do wonderful things for making the space just feel more natural. So if you were in that kind of third category there of, wanting your space, really being really happy with your space already, but wanting to provide more nature, this is a really great way to do that. And once you have taken out, once you've decluttered and taken out a lot of that stuff and the toys, at first you might go through a period where it feels like the space is really empty, but adding plants is a great way to fill that space back up in a meaningful and important way. Now you want to choose plants that are easy to grow, that are hardy, that are fun for children to touch. So making it like a sensory thing, that are fun to grow, fun to play with. This is not going to be something where you want to put plants in that are just for decoration. You really want your kids to be able to engage with them. So, maybe some of those plants, hang them at different levels. Maybe some of those plants you're going to hang from the ceiling or put high up on a shelf just for decoration that your child might not be touching. But try to keep as much as you can down at their level where they can actually engage with the plants. And, absolute worst case is they kill the plant and you replace it, or, they dump out the dirt and you have to clean it up. But think about all of the learning that happens when they're able to help grow the plants and help take care of them and touch them and play with them and break them off if they have to. So there's plants that you can choose that are better for learning with children. And if you join the nature group, this is kind of a little bonus tip here for you, for everybody, even if you're watching in the replay, joining that Facebook group that I mentioned from the beginning, the pinned post at the top, I actually have as a welcome gift for everybody that joins. And if maybe you've been in there already and you haven't noticed it, but the pinned post actually has a free PDF that you can print off or look up that has top 10 best plants for kids. I put that together as some of my favorite plants. So there in the chat box again is the link for that, the bit.ly/nature group. Join us over there, follow that pinned post, and you'll get that bonus PDF there so you can access some great ideas for bringing plants in. So moving right along here, step 7, and this is something that Chris had mentioned in the question box there, is using natural loose parts. So if you are familiar at all with the Reggio Emilia approach to learning or the Montessori approach to learning, and even in the Waldorf style learning, loose parts is really key to early childhood and young childhood education. And playing with natural loose parts, it fuels and promotes creative thinking. It enhances a natural curiosity about the way things work and develops problem-solving skills. So, we do think a lot about having those loose parts already in our space, maybe with blocks or even Legos, or, we might have like a PVC pipe building, or lots of different things that we talk about with loose parts. But this is a really great way to bring that nature inside and have your child interacting with nature while still promoting a lot of these same specific learning styles and tools. So natural loose parts, you might have things like rocks, tree rounds. If you have a branch that's being cut down in your neighborhood, go ask for it, and I bet that a tree cleaning crew would give it to you. But twigs, pine cones, tree bark, acorns, seashells, leaves, seed pods, seasonal objects, pine branches, flower seeds, all of these make really great natural loose parts. And this is going to be different from the nature table in that, at the nature table, your child is bringing in the nature elements that make sense to them and that they want to investigate. With the loose parts, the adult is doing that. So you are gathering these pieces. So maybe you're doing it outside when you're going for a walk. Maybe, depending on where you live, maybe you don't have access to seashells. So you might want to buy those at like a craft store or online. But either way, this is the adult kind of curating these pieces and bringing them to the space, and putting them in. What you want to do now with this is you're going to have to think outside the box. As an adult, our brains are already kind of segmented in specific ways to understand things, and we've pieced things together in our own minds. But for a child's space, to promote that creative thinking, you're going to have to take yourself out of that mindset, put yourself, thinking outside of the box here, and introduce these natural loose parts in ways that your child can investigate with them and incorporate them into the play with elements that aren't natural. So for example, and Chris recommended something here earlier, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. She said that she'll bring out those cars, but next to the basket of cars, maybe she'll put a basket of rocks there, and just kind of see. This isn't something that needs an introduction. You don't have to show the kids that you're doing this. Just have it sitting there for them and see what happens. One of my favorite things to do is incorporate, my youngest son loves building things. So we have magnetiles that will rotate out, and he has building blocks. And I love to put an assortment of natural items next to the building platform. And I love to put them near the art space. My oldest son is really all about art and painting. So I love to maybe throw some real flowers next to the paintbrushes, or, some tree bark next to the paper, just to kind of see what they do with it, and just allowing them that flexibility to incorporate the natural. What you want basically is for them to incorporate those natural elements seamlessly with the man-made toys. So giving them that opportunity to incorporate those pieces. Step 8 is using nature as decor. So one of the things that I want to kind of give you as a guideline here to think about when you're setting up a space, when you think about a learning space or a classroom specifically, if you think about what you think a public school classroom, like for example, looks like, everything that is at a child's eye level and below, they're going to see that as meaningful information. So if it is sitting at their eye level, hanging at their eye level on the wall, or down below that, that's all going to be things that they're going to engage with, interact with, and learn from. Anything that is hanging above your child's eye level is decoration. It means nothing to them. So when I walk into a classroom to kind of help teachers out with the things that I'm talking about today, everything that's above their child's eye level they have like alphabet posters and all of these, very creative, colorful, generic classroom wall art, but it means nothing. The kids are not learning from that. They're not reading it. They might see it passively, but those are not, you really want to think about setting up a space that is meaningful for the child. So something that is important that you want them to be engaging with at their eye level and below is where you want to put that. So think about that as your kind of like your line around the room. Now, when we do that, unfortunately, that tends to leave a lot of empty space of everything above, especially if you're working with really young kids. That's, 4 feet of wall space is going to be nothing, or you might think useless. We tend to want to fill that with that wall art. But by using natural elements, we can fill that empty space, but also create a really welcoming and organic feel to the room. So the 3 tips that I have for using nature as decor in a space, number 1 would be think big. So in this case, anything that's going to fill up high spaces, big spaces, tall spaces. Hang a branch from the ceiling, or use really tall trees or tall plants to throw up to take up wall space, or hang leaves or whatever, mobiles, whatever you can bring in from outside, hang that up high. Also thinking small, so any empty spaces that you have on shelves or on, like a vase of real flowers on their table, thinking in those tiny elements, and that really ties the room together as well. And then thinking seasonally, so anything you can bring in at different times of the year to kind of promote that natural connection to the changing seasons is another great way to use nature as decor. So obviously right now it's fall in most of the US, so we've got pumpkins and gourds and corn and corn kernels and wheatgrass and all kinds of autumny fall things that you could bring into that space to use both as loose parts and as natural decoration. So step 9 is setting up provocations. And if you're familiar with the Reggio Emilia approach, like I mentioned a little bit ago, you know what this is. If you're not familiar with a provocation, basically it is an assortment of like loose parts or a specific activity that you're setting up for the child specifically, but it's open-ended and it allows them the freedom to problem solve and investigate and test some theories. And the child has control over the learning environment here. And this is a really, child-friendly approach to learning that I specifically subscribe to, and a lot of the people that, kind of are around me and end up, I imagine most of you are the same way here if you're listening in. So, you kind of take what your child is interested in at the time, a theme that they're interested in, or like for my son right now, like I mentioned, it would be trees, and set up an activity that they can manipulate on their own to get basically to learn through that. So it's a play-based learning, and setting up this type of learning and these provocations is exactly the scenario that you're looking at for setting up this learning space. So everything that you've done up to this point, assuming you followed all of these steps now you're here to create these, open-ended activities based on what your child is interested in, to allow them to investigate. And this is one way I didn't, I'll go back here a second. I purposefully didn't put a bunch of pictures in today because I don't want you to have these preconceived notions about what your space should look like. We kind of get Pinterest overload a lot of times when we think about setting up a space, and I don't want that to be the case here. I don't want to give you a whole bunch of ideas that you're going to maybe want to copy, but I want you to set up a space that's uniquely for your child based on their interests, their learning styles, your specific space, your geographical region. I want you to be able to kind of put all of these pieces together in a way that makes the most sense for you. But I do want to show you some examples of provocations because I think if you're not familiar with the concept, you really kind of need that visual to help you here. So the steps for setting up a provocation, I don't really need to go into all of it now because I've spent a lot of time already, but you start with an interest that your child has, and then you incorporate natural elements and man-made elements together to set up a provocation for investigating and learning and creating. So here are two really good examples. So on the left here is an example of, so obviously at this point, this child is interested in rocks or minerals. So they have just a very simple provocation set up on the table here. They've got mirrors, different bins, a sorting tray. They've got a piece of literature there that's great for the child to kind of look through and get their own inspiration. There's magnifying glasses, there's gems, different rocks and minerals. So this is a lot of pieces here. There isn't necessarily something specific that the child is supposed to be doing, but they have the ability to kind of just open-ended play and create with something. So the adult had some control over setting up what they're going to be doing, but in general, it's a child-led provocation. And then on the right here is a more art-based example. So you also want to kind of take into consideration the things that your child likes to do and the way that they learn. But here, so a child who is interested in flowers and plant life, this is a really great provocation here, and you can see an everydaystory.com is a really great site. The blogger's name is Kate, and she shares a lot of great information, but she put this together specifically to show you what a provocation could look like. So you can see there's the information on the image. But so this is something set up. Obviously they expect the child to paint, but it's totally open-ended. There isn't a specific way that the child has to do this. So there's flowers there, a mirror underneath it, again, taking us all the way back to that natural light step, glass jars so the stems are visible, paint with spaces to mix the paint, and water and paintbrushes and paper and paint swatches, all different kinds of pieces just kind of brought together. But it's totally open-ended in the way that the child wants to engage with this. They can paint a picture of the flowers. They could paint with the flowers. They could crush up the petals to make different paint colors. So there's all kinds of different things that the child can do here. And by allowing it to be this open-ended activity, you're kind of bringing that nature in and you're setting them up for something that they're already interested in based on their learning styles and needs, but they have the flexibility to problem solve and investigate on their own. So that's kind of the goal there of a provocation. I'm gonna check on this question right here. My audio went out. Angie, try going out and back in. Hopefully that helps. And I see another question here. How do you adapt for toddlers? Okay, I'm gonna come back to that question because that's a common one. So Yvonne, hold that question there. That's one I'll come back to in the Q&A. So those are an example of provocations there. So, and then your 10th step is going to be making a plan. So this is kind of like step 10, step 1. I don't know. This is the 10th step of learning, but this is really the first or second thing that you want to do here. But once you have all of this information now, I've thrown a lot at you. And the way that I generally teach this is over 10 days, a 10-day action course. So this is kind of a lot of information piled on you right now. So what I want you to do is you're going to make a plan. So what small steps can you take right now? You can hang a mirror on the wall. You can go declutter that space and get all of those pieces out that don't need to be there anymore. You can bring some natural elements in. You can set up a nature table or designate a space for a nature table. Those are things that you can do immediately that will make a big difference. And then make a plan for those bigger steps that you need to plan ahead for, maybe for your budget or your time. So if you do plan, maybe you have dark walls that you want to paint right now. That's not something probably that you can do immediately. That's something that you want to plan ahead for. Now, in terms of budget, I really don't want you to think that a lot of money needs to be spent here, because that's really not the point. If anything, you're going to have to budget some time to kind of make these changes, little by little. But this isn't something that should cost a lot of money, because the point is that you're bringing nature in, you're getting out a lot of things that don't need to be in there, and you're bringing nature in a real and meaningful way. And in general, nature should be free. You can just kind of go out and gather the pieces that make sense at any given time. So you really shouldn't have to plan a specific amount of money to do this. Really, I want this to be as much free or very, very cheap as possible. So, taking that back, then getting those action steps planned out, taking that back to that very first step where we talked about our purpose and our why, and then finding out how your plans match your goals. So, we've given you all of these ideas and you have all of these steps now, but you still want to go back to that individual number one there of, your individual purpose, your individual why, what you want your child to experience in a space. And depending on your child's age, definitely incorporate them in this process. My 18-month-old, maybe I wouldn't incorporate him, but my 4-year-old, I would totally ask him, what do you want your space to feel like? What do you want to learn about? Help me do this, and we could set that up together. So I have something I can help you with here. So like I mentioned at the beginning, I have a free action worksheet. It is a 3-page worksheet that basically outlines all of these steps that I just went over. So you have that right there. You can print this out. It's not a whole bunch of, there's like no color on it. So you can easily print it out without taking up ink. bit.ly/nature hack checklist, typing that right in there for you to the chat box. You can click right on that. You just put in your email address and it'll send you a link in the email, so you can download that right away. It gives you a space. You can see there's kind of like a screenshot. It gives you a space to kind of write in any ideas that you're having, and it really is going to help you break each of these steps down and look at ways that you can incorporate this into your space. So go grab that. And then moving forward here, before we get into the Q&A, I want to ask you, how would you like to learn to create hundreds of meaningful, engaging, nature-based learning experiences for your child? So now that you have set up this space, you're ready for those provocations, and that tends to be the most nerve-wracking place. So, you've followed all these steps, you've put together this beautiful learning space, but now what? Now you've taken out a lot of those toys that are supposed to kind of provide the entertainment, but that's not really the goal here. We want our children engaging and interacting with nature and the elements in their room. So how do you set up those pieces for your child? Excuse me. And those activities for your child based on their interests, while still kind of keeping true to that child-led nature. And then, a lot of times, like I mentioned, we had that, we kind of feel like we're going at this alone, especially if we're homeschooling or, child caregivers. So, how would you like to be a part of a supportive community of other families doing exactly what you're doing? And one way you can do that is definitely going back and joining that Facebook group. But another way is that I want to share with you now, if you'll indulge me for a moment, the curriculum that I've put together. At the beginning of the webinar today, I mentioned that one of the things that I, after I left the classroom and kind of dedicated myself to helping other parents provide these experiences for their children, I put together a curriculum, a pre-K and kindergarten curriculum that's centered around nature. And I started selling that in the spring, and it's been wildly popular. I've sold over 250 copies of it, and people are just loving it. And what I've decided to do, because since then I've also created courses. Like I mentioned, I teach this webinar today. I teach as a 10-day course. I've put together 4 different training courses and ebooks, and I have all of this content, but I want it to be available to everyone. So I've decided to kind of transition to a lifetime membership access where you basically get everything all at once. Everything I've already created and everything I'm going to create in the future, I'm kind of condensing it all into one big piece. And sales for that are just now opening. So I want to share that with you now. So specifically, if you haven't heard about this curriculum, what this is, it's 20 themes. It's broken down, and all of it is centered around this idea that you can provide these enriching and meaningful learning experiences through nature based on your child's interest, while allowing them the opportunity to do that in an open-ended and child-led way. So I have 20 different themes, nature-based themes inside the curriculum, things like trees, bugs, birds, all 4 different seasons. We've got ocean life, rainforest animals. So basically, space and light and colors of nature. So basically, any nature based thing that your child might show interest in, I've got a theme for it in here. And inside each of those themes is 25 or more different activities to help you bring that concept and that theme and that interest to life for your child in these open-ended ways. So there's nature explorations. There's 5 different categories. So you get nature explorations, which I help you get your child outside and exploring in their specific world while taking into account what they're studying. So for example, if your child is very interested in ocean life, you can pull up that ocean life theme. And even if you don't live near the beach, I show you ways that you can incorporate that element of natural ocean life inside your own outdoor area. So those are the nature explorations, art explorations, so using nature to investigate through art, math extensions, so setting up those math foundational blocks using natural elements. Sensory play, which is especially great for any young child. Science experiments, of course, which is a great way that we've set up our learning space already. If you followed today's steps, you have a space that's set up for that investigation. And then I also include themed book lists. One of my passions is literacy and childhood literacy. And so I do not believe that forcing young children to learn phonics and letters and learning how to read too early is the key to that. The key to developing a lifelong passion of reading is their parents reading with them, and investigating things that they're interested in, and just an overexposure to reading and learning. So I have a book list inside each of the themes that kind of details my favorite books on the topic that you could go check out at your library, or get for your own your own collection. A literature focused lesson, which helps you kind of go deeper into the stories and ask the right kinds of questions to help investigate, or excuse me, to build up those early literacy blocks without doing it in a way that is boring and rote memorization type things. And then I also have at the end a kid-friendly recipe, which another one of my passions is healthy eating and developing a connection to our food. So research has shown that when children have a hand in preparing their food and growing their own food, they develop healthy eating habits that last for the rest of their lives. So in a really simple way that I could help you do this, I have a recipe at the beginning or at the end of every theme that relates to the theme, that's a healthy recipe, that's easy for your child to put together. You get lifetime access, like I mentioned. You get access to all of it. It's available to download and print, or you can I have it saved as individual files. So you don't have to sort through. They don't build off of each other. Anytime your child shows an interest in something, boom, you go right in, you pick the file that matches their interest, and you have your activities right there. It basically takes all of the work out of it for you. So when your child comes inside and says, "Oh my God, I found a butterfly. I want to learn everything about butterflies," you don't have to go to Pinterest or Google or all these different blogs to find 1,000 little activities. Everything's right there for you. You open up that bugs list, you've got the book list, you've got all the activities, and you're ready to go. So there's also an instructional guide in here, which it's like a 10-page guide at the beginning of the curriculum that just kind of gives you all kinds of other information, like setting up a learning space, making a plan, safety tips in nature, research benefits of nature, just some more information for the parents there. So what you get to create and inspire with this curriculum is a sense of wonder and excitement in your child for the world around them. So children, I firmly believe that children are born with a natural curiosity about their world. So inspiring them to create in an open-ended way like these activities do, you get to encourage that wonder and excitement and extend it through their learning years, their most important learning years, to help them develop this love of the world around them. And then you get over 500 activities, obviously exploratory based, nature based activities that you get to investigate and set up for your child. You get to tailor the learning experience designed around your child's individual interests. You get to set up, you get to choose based on what they're interested in, based on their learning styles, based on the way that your child learns. You get to set that up. It doesn't have to be, this isn't a pre-programmed thing for you. This isn't a lesson plan structure that you have to follow no matter what your child might be interested in at the time. This gives you the flexibility to easily create that learning experience. And then you get to engage in nature explorations, and you get to create fun art activities and messy sensory play and exciting science and cooking fun and joyful reading and math understanding. So you get to just develop this totally well-rounded sense of creativity and learning using nature as your guide. And then just a little peek inside here. So on the far left, so you get to see kind of what it looks like on the inside of the curriculum. The far left picture is an example there from the introduction. So that's one of the things I talk about there is how to set up your learning space. You can see, if you can read the fine print there, I talk about like a nature table, an art space, different types of spaces that you can set up. So that's just a piece from the introduction. In the center there is an overview example from the rocks theme of the curriculum. So you can see I give you a purpose. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, I start everything with a reason and a purpose and a why. So I give you that purpose at the beginning of every theme. I give you a key learning, which is one sentence that at the end of discovering this theme together, that's the one thing that your child should be able to walk away understanding. Some focus words to kind of build that vocabulary knowledge with your child. And then following that page would be the book list and the literature activity. And then on the far right, you see just an example of how the activities are lined up. This is the nature explorations activity page from the spring theme. You can see I give you very detailed information on how to set up those specific activities and tailor them to your child's needs. So that's just a little peek inside the 20 themed curriculum there. And then since I'm selling it only now as a lifetime membership access, you get everything that I've ever created. So you also get the 3 ebooks that I've written, which are what is my child's unique learning style. So that's something that I've talked about a lot today is, tailoring your space and your activities based on the way your child learns. And as a parent and a teacher, this is one of the most important pieces that you can have when setting up anything that's new for your child outside of academics, even the way that you teach them how to wash dishes or do laundry, any of those life skills. The way that your child learns, the way that any person specifically learns, is a really key piece of information to have. So this is a great ebook that I wrote that kind of guides you through the different types of learning styles. There's a quiz in there that you can take to determine where your child falls. And then I have some more information about specific learning philosophies that match the type of learning style that your child has. So tons of information in there. Preschoolers Cook ebook, which is more healthy recipes, kind of just an extension of that recipe that I included at the end of every theme. I also have this cookbook that kind of helps you develop more of those activities, more of those recipes that are child friendly, they're healthy, and they help your child connect with the food and make those healthy eating habits forever. And then Stuck Inside is sort of a quick go-to guide for you with indoor activities that you can do when you can't go outside and you don't really have anything prepared. This is a book I wrote of just a bunch of different activities that you can kind of go to and pull out, and it's something that you could, no matter what you have or don't have on hand at home, these are activities that you can do right away when there's cabin fever. And then the training courses that I mentioned I've put together already. You can see the Nature Hack Your Learning Space. That's basically this webinar only stretched over 10 days. So tons more information and step-by-step specific information there. I have a homeschooling course, or a homeschooling 101 to kind of get you started with homeschooling, a literacy-rich learning environment course, and a technology course using technology in meaningful and educational ways. So these are the 4 courses that I've already developed that you'll get access to when the website launches. And then any other courses that I put together. I already have planned at least one course a month for the next like 8 or 9 months. So you get access to all of those. And then the specific community development, there's a private Facebook group that you'll get access to where only members, can go in and join. And then I'm going to be doing monthly live virtual hangouts. So sort of like this, only it's going to be so that we can all kind of chime in, we can chat together, talk about frustrations and struggles and anything that you might want to share. I'm going to do yearly live runs of the courses that I mentioned before. So all 4 of these courses and any of the new ones that I have, I'll run them live, which is the way that I've done them already is, we put together a group and we go through them together to kind of help each other, and I can give individual feedback. I have monthly guest presenters that are going to be coming in once a month. I have at least 5 or 6 already planned out for the next couple of months. But we have somebody coming to share about setting educational goals and plans to reach those goals based on play-based learning. And I have somebody coming in to share about using herbs and with your kids and helping your child learn about herbs. And I have someone coming to share about parenting a special needs child and how to do that with and without a community. So lots of great people coming in to share more with you through this membership site. And then I'm also putting together, I've released one test version and it's gone really, really well. So I'm excited. I think I'll release the first one officially in December, but I'm putting together a Kids Nature e-magazine because I really wanted to utilize technology in engaging in meaningful ways, like I mentioned in the course. So one of the ways that I'm doing that is by putting out my own e-magazine for kids that they can kind of engage and read with their parents and contribute to. So that's something that I'm putting together that you'll get access to through the membership as well. So how do you get it? I've told you all of these great things. So lifetime access right now, the website actually launches November 15th. So before the website launches, I'm kind of offering some additional discounts, big discounts for that. You do get the curriculum right away, though. That's already written and out there. So if you get in on this, you get the curriculum immediately, and then you'll get access to all of the website and the courses and all of that November 15th. So if you join today, you can get all of that for one payment of $129. Or I also have a payment plan option where you can do 3 payments stretched out over the next 3 months for $45 a month. So you pay a little bit more with the payment plan, but obviously it's just kind of covers stretching that out. So to see that, to learn more, and you can get all kinds of. Hold on, I'm going to type this in here to the chat box so you can hop on over there, bit.ly/yournaturallearner membership.com. The new website's called Your Natural Learner. So you can get access there. This price is only going to last for the next couple of days. And then it will go up again because as we get closer and closer to that launch date, the price is going to be higher to kind of better reflect what you get through here. So again, that's one payment of $129 for everything, immediate access to the curriculum. And then you'll get all of those ebooks, those training courses, the community membership, the guest presenters, the live monthly chats, the kids e-magazine, and you get access to all of that for one payment of $129 or 3 payments of the $45 a month. And then as a bonus to those of you that are here live, this is only for the people that are live right now. If you buy before the webinar is over, you get free access to an herbal learning course that only a specific group of my members have gotten. But if you buy in, you have to do this before the webinar is over. So if you're joining me through through the replay, this is no longer accessible. But if you're here still live and you click on through there and you join me now, you get access to an herbal learning course that my good friend Christina from the Hippie Homemaker put together. Christina she is a blogger and an herbalist, and she actually has purchased A Child's World. She's purchased my curriculum. She's working through that this year with her son. And she and I were talking a few months ago, and she said that she really wanted to find a way to incorporate herbs into her son's learning routine because that's, she's an herbalist. That's what she does. So she had this brilliant idea to put together an herbal learning course, which she's releasing in pieces over the next year. And 2 of the chapters have already been released. So you'd get access to those right away today. And this will be, she's selling it as a series as she releases them. So in total, when this is all complete next year, it's a $300 plus value because of the piece, if you pay per chapter, and you will get access to all of it. So you already get the 2 chapters that have already been released, and then you get access to all of the rest of it if you join my membership only before the webinar is over today. So click through that link and you can access that there. But what she has in here, she basically has written like a Waldorf style story that she is telling the story of these children that are going on an adventure through the woods to rescue their grandmother, and they have to gather all of these different herbs. And then each new chapter that's released is about a new herb. So the first one she released was about chamomile, and she there's so much information in here. She shares the story of the children gathering the chamomile, and then she shares information on how to grow it, how to use it, tons of recipes to use in food, and like, herbal remedies and gifts to give, and just a way amazing herbal learning course that I'm using with my son, and it's amazing. And you can get access to that if you join the membership before the webinar is over today. So we'll keep going there. So again, you can get access now through one payment of $129, 3 payments of the $45. You can click the link in the membership there. Now, I do want to do a giveaway here for those of you that have we've gone over an hour here. We've got people that are still hanging on. So for those of you that have made it all the way to this point, I want to do a giveaway here. One winner will get, now this is totally off topic, it seems, but at this time of year, I noticed in my group that a lot of moms are getting totally frustrated and just kind of overwhelmed with all of the information that we're bringing in. So I want to give something to you. I see a question here real quick. How do we pay the payment? So Sarah, if you go to the link in the chat box there, the bit.ly/Your Natural Learner membership. And at the bottom of that site is the link where you can pay. There's 2 different links there. You can pay the full $129, or you can pay the payments, and that comes out through PayPal. So you just click through that link, it'll set it up for you. So then it's just, you make the first payment now, and then the other 2 are just auto deducted the next 2 months. So I hope that answers that question there. But anyway, so for the giveaway here, I really wanted to give you something that's kind of a self-care for moms and teachers, because it's important that we take care of ourselves, and it's important that we are inspired and excited to do these things for our children. So I want to give away something to the parents, because, when you join in my Facebook group, you get some freebies there to use with your kids. If you join my membership, you get all these great things to use for your children, and the kind of community for you. But I want to give you something tangible that's just for you. So even though this seems totally off the wall, I know that it'll be appreciated. So I'm going to give one of the people that are here live, I'm going to send you a box, like an actual comes to your mailbox prize and present. So it's not just a download, it's not just a PDF, it's something that's tangible that you can use. If you haven't heard of David's Tea, my favorite loose tea company, I wrote here, the tea is magical. The bursts of flavors will calm a stressful kid mess situation and energize you to tackle these, nature hacking projects. So I'll send a gift to one of the winners today. So if you could do me a favor, in the chat box, could you type a number from 1 to 10? And then I will choose, I'll go into random.org here. So go ahead, if you want to participate in the giveaway, go ahead and type in any number 1 to 10, and then we will, I'll give you a few minutes to do that, and then I will choose a winner. So just popping this thing up here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do a Q&A. I'm going to give a few minutes for people to type in a number here, and then I will go into random.org and choose a winner. Angie, I haven't been able to chat, but yeah, I don't know if for some reason nobody's typing in the chat box. I don't know why it's not showing up. So I hope, I'm going to go ahead and go back to this so you can actually type in, because for some reason it's not, a lot of you aren't seeing the chat box. But we're going to do a Q&A now, and I'll answer any questions that you have, and that way it'll kind of give everybody time to chime in and pick a number for the giveaway, and then also to access that really great bonus here. I'm going to put this here so you can see the link to get that, and get that herbal course as well if you order today. And that goes for the people that, if you purchase all outright, or if you do the payment plans, you still get access to that membership there. So I'm going to go back to Yvonne's question from earlier. She said, how do you adapt for toddlers who put things in their mouth? I supervise closely, but they're fast. At what age do you start provocations? So that is a really great question, especially if you have young people or really young kids in your care or in your home. And this is just kind of something in general. I believe that when a child is very engaged, they're much less likely to put something in their mouths. Now, my oldest son was not a mouther. He did not put things in his mouth. And so I just kind of thought that this was a problem that other people had. And then I had my younger son, and everything goes in his mouth. So yes, you have to supervise, but you can still start provocations even at a really, really young age. As soon as a child is able to, manipulate items and move them around, we do provocations with my son. He's, like I said, and the youngest is 18 months. And you really just kind of, if you know that they're going to put things in their mouths no matter what, you really kind of have to just think about the specific items that you're using. So use larger items that they can still manipulate and use, but won't necessarily choke on. So remember also that a child puts things in their mouth to learn about them. It's a sensory thing as well. So, very young children learn about objects when they put them in their mouths. So, if it's not a choking hazard, then I would say it's totally okay for a child to be putting them near their mouth or to investigate with their mouth. You want to give them something that's very interesting and lots of pieces that they can use to kind of prevent that instinct. But it's really something that the child has to grow out of. Just really, you want to think about using larger pieces. That's kind of the easiest thing. So maybe you wouldn't put acorns out for a really young child that's going to do that. Maybe you'd use pine cones instead, or larger rocks, or tree bark, or like small pumpkins. I'm trying to think of anything you could use like right now. But basically just using those larger pieces is an easier way to prevent that from happening. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. So let's see, are there any other questions here? Angie says she hasn't okay, the chat box. So Sarah asked again, how do we pay the payments? So once again, you can get that, clicking over here. So you have one payment of $129 or 3 payments of $45. And if you go onto this page right here, this bit.ly/your natural learner membership, you can get, and I did type it in the chat box, but I think a lot of people have said they can't access in there. But anyway, if you order before the webinar is over, you get access to this herbal learning course as well. And then, but yeah, the payment plans you can do, it's auto deducted. So we'll take care of that. So I have a couple of answers. So we have more people live than we do, including numbers there. So if you have not yet put a number in for the giveaway, I'm going to choose that here in a moment. I'm going to answer one more question and then I'm going to choose the giveaway. So if you haven't put in a number 1 through 10 yet, do that now. But one other question that I did have was, in terms of the natural loose parts, somebody asked me, how do I ensure, this was in a previous webinar, but I'm going to carry it over here because it's pretty important. What do I do about bringing inside any like germs or critters or bugs that might be hiding in the natural elements? And this was not something, as a newbie, this was not something that I thought about. And a couple of years ago, when we first started bringing the natural loose parts in for my son, we brought in a bowl of acorns that he had gathered, and he played with them and he painted them, and we kind of just let them set out overnight. And the next morning, I was very disgusted to see a bowl of acorns and maggots, because the flies had laid eggs inside the acorns. It's very common for acorns to be home to eggs and larvae that you wouldn't see until 24 hours later. So that was disgusting, and I don't want that to happen to you because it can be very discouraging if it's one of the first things that you try. So 2 tips for taking care of that. You can freeze them or heat them up and kill any of the little critters that might be lurking in the natural loose parts. So if you spread your items out on a baking sheet, pop them in the oven at the lowest temperature setting that you have, so 150 or 200, whatever you have is the lowest setting. Pop them in there for about 2 to 3 hours, and that will take care of it will heat up and kill any of the little eggs that might be laid in there or the larvae. Alternatively, that's the fastest method. Alternatively, you could put them in a Ziploc baggie and throw them in the freezer, leave them in there overnight, and the extreme cold temperatures will also do the exact same thing. In general, will take care of any of the eggs or larvae laying in there. So if you're concerned at all about using those natural loose parts and releasing critters into your home, those are 2 tips for getting rid of that. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the winner here. I think you can see my screen here. I'm going to pop into the random.org and generate that. So number 1, we don't have any number 1s. We'll generate again. Number 3. So Sarah is the winner. Sarah Shaft. So congratulations to Sarah. So I'm going to type that in the chat box, even if you can't see. So giveaway winner number 3, that would be Sarah. So Sarah, if you want to, I see Sarah has also joined my group. So yay, thank you, Sarah. So you get the you get everything today, Sarah. You get everything, the bonus and the membership, and you get the giveaway as well. So congratulations to you, and thank you for joining me today. So we still have a little bit of time. I'll stay on here for probably the next 9 or so minutes because there's still a lot of people joining me here live. So thank you very much for your time today. If you are joining through the replay, you can definitely still access for the next 48 hours this option to pay for $129 or the 3 payments of $45. That price will go up in 48 hours. So this replay is only available for 48 hours. Once this replay is gone, this price is going to go up to reflect more of the value inside the program and the membership. So if you are still here joining me live, once again, you can join and also get this bonus herbal program, this $300 some value. If this is only for live members though. But if you're still here joining me, you can access that. I'm going to remain on to give you a little bit longer to get that extra bonus there. bit.ly/your natural learner membership. And again, if you're joining me in the replay, down below the video here, you'll see all of these links. So the link to that Facebook group, the link to your free checklist to help you work through the steps today that I shared with you, and then the link also to check out the membership and everything that you get along with that. And if you click through in the membership page as well, the checkout page, there's way down at the bottom, you can click over to learn more about the curriculum itself. So there's a separate page, that'll tell you all about the curriculum, and that will give you a whole lot more information. You can get a free sample there to check it out. But again, these prices are only good for the next 48 hours. So I'm going to remain here for a few more minutes live. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording for the members. But if you have any other questions at all, please pop in now. Let's see. So Yvonne says, thank you for discussion on toddlers and webinar. Parents don't understand why I don't want to use a lot of plastic and noisy toys. This is reinforcing. Yes. So Yvonne, there is that payment plan option for you if you wanted that, and that will go away soon too. So that's just an option for you, of course, but I understand there, and I'm really glad that I was able to share some good information with you today. Feel free to link the, I see you have a family childcare business. I don't know how you connect with your parents, but this email or this webinar will go out in a replay, and it'll come to your email that you registered with today. So feel free to share this webinar with those parents. That again, it'll only be live for 48 hours, but if they want to watch through this and kind of see a lot of where you're coming from, that might help them a lot to kind of support you in the loose parts play and the reduction of plastic noisy toys. Definitely feel free to share this so that they can, to help you specifically, so you can see where that, so they can see where you're coming from in terms of that, and good for you for wanting to make that difference for other people's children. So if you have any other questions, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording here. I'll remain live for probably another 5 minutes or so, just to take it to that 90-minute mark. And if you have any other questions at all, feel free to pop in there. I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off. Thank you for watching if you're here through the replay.